Welcome back to Fantasy Team Previews. Today we're looking at the Edmonton Oilers, and boy did they regress in the offseason. Third worst in terms of regression, behind only Dallas and Colorado, but that's not the end of the story, and we'll go over all of this in detail. So they did lose 44 points. What this is a combined rating sum of their top 12 forwards and their top 6D, so they did lose a bit of fantasy value in the offseason, but the key here, 91st percentile in team defense. So when we look at this, that's excellent. And I'll get into that in the goaltending section. In fact, let's take a look at that right now. So the thing here has always been, is Stuart Skinner good enough? And my arch nemesis in my category league, AC Delaware River, had him last year, and he hung on all year and dropped him right at the end of the season. And he just couldn't let go because of this team win number. 24 wins in 49 games is excellent. Team defense is excellent, 91st percentile. And they added Jake Wallman last year, who's only factored into some of this data. So they're an excellent team defense. And they're insulating him very well, but he's just not playing that great in terms of his own metrics. So -4 in terms of goals saved above expected, .894 save percentage, 2.9 goals against is not bad. So he just needs to play a little bit better, and he will be an excellent fantasy goaltender. The narrative has kind of shifted the other way, where now after the postseason, the last 2 years, people are wondering, is this a good enough goaltending situation for Edmonton heading into the playoffs? It's probably not. But for fantasy, for regular season, this is a perfect setup. He's going to have the narrative against him. He's going to drop in ADP because of that. The team defense is excellent, so it's there. And you're potentially getting a starter. Who else do they have? Calvin Pickard? He's not on this list, but he's definitely their backup, and he's relatively better in terms of save percentage and overall numbers, but he's not going to get the start volume. It's going to be Stuart Skinner. So this is a perfect setup in terms of what you're looking for in fantasy goaltending. Now, when we take a look at Calvin Pickard, if I can find him. So Pickard, again, the team defense, excellent. He was way below expected in the regular season as well. .902 save percentage, that is better than Stuart Skinner. 2.7, that is better than Stuart Skinner. 22 wins, that's not bad. 35 games. Skinner had missed some time, so Pickard took the net over for a brief period there and did pretty well with it in terms of wins. So it doesn't really matter which goaltender they have in there. They're going to get wins. They're going to get some sort of goals against average. If you're playing in a league with that, it's going to be relatively decent. So I would definitely look at Stuart Skinner this year. Calvin Pickard's obviously a waiver type of pickup if you ever see any injury with Skinner, but definitely a lot to work with there. When we take a look at the line combinations, I want to start on the D pairs to kind of hammer that point home. You're looking at Ekholm Bouchard, Darnell Nurse, Brett Kulak, and then Jake Wallman, Ty Emberson. There's a really good blue line here that's insulating that goaltending, so I definitely want a piece of that. Wallman could be their power play 2 quarterback. I would think Bouchard is their PP1 guy, so there could be some value there. Nurse, you know what you're going to get in terms of hits and blocks out of him. Ekholm has been fantasy relevant in the past, so there's some fantasy value on this D-core as well. When we take a look at the forwards, you know what you're going to get. McDavid, Draisaitl, they should be top 5 picks. Obviously, McDavid is usually number 1 overall. Draisaitl, I would have no later than 5th. And then there's a bunch of question marks all up and down this top 9, basically. Isaac Howard, what does he look like? Matt Savoy, what does he look like? Andrew Mangiapane, what does he look like? Trent Frederick, we know what we're going to get. Podkolzin, you kind of know what you're going to get. But Howard, Savoy, Mangiapane, all coming into this situation. They could have elite level exposure with McDavid and Hyman or Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins. But which one of them is going to stay in the top 6 or the top 9? Which one of them is going to be fantasy relevant? Well, let's take a look at what it looks like on the Player Hub. So Draisaitl and McDavid, I'm not even going to touch. You know what you're going to get out of them. Zach Hyman last year underperforming. So 44 points in 73, not good at all. 27 goals, not bad. 93rd percentile in goals per game, 2.88 shots per game. So he's still relatively good. I would assume he's going to regress upward in terms of goals because he's shooting a ton. Maybe his shooting percentage was down last year. Power play numbers are good, 12 power play points. So you could bet on a bounce back from a guy like Zach Hyman. Nugent Hopkins, very underwhelming last year. I drafted him with hopes that he could return to that power play form that he was at a couple years ago. He does put up good numbers on the power play, 20 power play points, but nothing crazy elsewhere. 49 points in 78 games, 0.63 point per game. So you kind of know what you're getting out of Nuge. The question marks were Andrew Mangiapane, who we do have some data on, 28 points in 81, 14 and 14. Nothing special there. He had that one season where he had, I think, 35 goals, but can he return to that form? We don't know. I don't have a file on Savoy. I don't have a file on Isaac Howard. So we're kind of just throwing darts at the dartboard if you're going to draft them late. But it is a question mark. If you're going to take upside, I would want upside that's, attached to Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. So it does make sense to think about them during your draft, but there's probably better options out there on the waiver wire. In terms of D, Evan Bouchard is an elite level fantasy defenseman. 26 power play points, 14 goals, 67 points total. Shot volume is excellent. So you're getting some blocks at 81st percentile, power play numbers 94th, shots 96th, assists 96th, point per game. There's even room for improvement there. He could be a point per game guy in fantasy in the regular season. The power play points come really easy for this team, and he's going to be the guy who's racking up the most of them. And then secondly, you have Jake Wallman. He was a power play quarterback when it came to San Jose, comes over in the trade deadline period, 99th percentile in blocks. You love that. The shot volume is excellent, 2.5 shots per game. You love that. The assists are going to be there because of the exposure that he's getting. So you love that. The power play points are probably going to be in this 8 to 15 range because he's not the PP1 guy, but there will still be some power play points to his file. So he could be a really decent D4 option. Maybe a guy who's on PP2, getting some blocks, filling out peripheral profile, but also still getting some point totals. In terms of Darnell Nurse, you know what you're going to get out of him. Hits, 2.1, blocks, 1.79, shots, 92nd percentile. The fact that he covers 3 of those categories makes him one of the best, peripheral hits, blocks type of D. Him, Jacob Trouba, Radko Gudas. But of the 3 of those, he's got the best shot volume, 2.47 shots per game. So that's what I like about his file. And then you also have Matthias Ekholm, who became fantasy relevant last year, half a point per game, 33 and 65, 87th percentile in blocks, 85th in shot volume, which is nice. He did get some power play time, although I don't think he will going forward because of what I just said about Jake Wallman. So there is enough to work with on this blue line to find some fantasy value. But in terms of the forwards, we kind of went over. There's a couple question marks. There's a couple guys like Hyman who could be a bounce back, but that's kind of how it shakes out in terms of Edmonton's team. Now, I do want to quickly touch on their numbers from last year to kind of drive this point home. 11th in goals for, 14th in goals against. So realistically, they are still a really good team. They should be at the top of the Pacific. You're still playing against San Jose 4+ times a year. You're still playing against some weaker teams in the Pacific, which is going to help drive that offensive production during the fantasy season. And you're still getting elite level exposure to guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. McDavid, I guess I'll touch on him now. Just because he kind of had a down year for McDavid looks like 100 points and 31 power play points with almost 3 shots per game and over an assist per game, which is kind of crazy that this is a down year for him. But we know what he's capable of. He's capable of 150 points. So it's crazy to think that if you're drafting second overall, there is a slight chance that Connor McDavid falls to you and you end up laughing your way to the championship. In terms of Draisaitl, he's dual position eligible, which makes him a little bit more fantasy valuable. He outperformed Connor McDavid last year at 106 points. He's 1.5 points per game, 1.49 points per game, 100th percentile in pretty much every offensive metric, 3.38 shots per game, better than McDavid. Power play points, 33. Goals, 52 goals last year. I believe that led the league, if I'm not mistaken. So you know what you're getting out of him. He shouldn't be anything worse than a 5th overall pick, but there's reason to believe that guys like Kucherov could be in the top 5. Kaprizov could be in the top 5. There's a conversation that we've never had before in that range, but I would feel safe and confident with either of these 2 guys at the top of the draft. That's going to do it for our Edmonton team preview. Stay tuned for the next team in this series. And also, if you haven't done so already, go and check out the Points League video and the Category League strategy breakdown video that I did based on your submissions to the Draft Strategy Collection Form. A lot of key insights in there on how to build your team for the 25-26 draft season. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.